Our first question this week comes from CalHog32, who wants to know, what about Mark Richt for coach? I know he had recent health issues, but if he could come in and stabilize the program for a couple of years while grooming a replacement, I think that would be huge for us. Does he have any ties to Sam Pittman? You know, if they hire anybody like that, I think it would probably be Butch Davis. He's a mature coach. He's got ties to Pittman, but I've heard nothing about Richt as a possible coaching candidate. HOGVILLE 1972 says, with all the talk about needing a football coach with Arkansas ties, is it that really important to building a winning culture on the Hill? What about Musselman? Does he have Arkansas ties? Is there a difference in football and basketball ties in needing to tie into the state? That's a really good question, and no, Arkansas ties are not necessary, but it is very important that the next coach come in and embrace Arkansas's history and culture. Let me go all the way back to Jeff Long, about 10 or 12 years ago when he came in after Frank Broyles, and it was almost like he wanted to remove everything that Broyles had done here and all of the history. There used to be these little 8x10 paintings that lined the walls of the Broyles Center. And you could go in there and see all these guys that went all the way back to the 1930s. I used to go look at them and then go ask questions. Who was this guy? Who was that guy? Sort of helped you know the history of Arkansas football. Well, those things got all removed. I don't know what happened to them. There was a big painting of Frank Broyles receiving the national championship trophy in '65, and it disappeared. And I was talking about it one day over at Bud Walton, and a janitor over there said, I'll show you. He unlocked a closet there on the floor next to mops, brooms, and other items in that janitor's closet was that painting. That's your history. It got stuck in a closet. Now let me talk about what Barry Lunney did in just 3 weeks as the interim head coach. In his first game, as they were pulling away from the Broyles Center to go to LSU, he stopped in front of that statue we all know about with the pigs that Jerry Jones donated, the wild band of Razorback hogs. And he got out and he started explaining how Arkansas got its name, the Razorbacks. And he pointed out to them that they got that in 1909 going down and playing LSU, or the game was actually played in Memphis, but they played LSU, beat them, and won what was called the unofficial championship of the South for being undefeated. And the players never knew that. A bunch of them never knew it. Now, the next week, as they went to War Memorial Stadium, Barry Lunney stopped in front of the stadium on Friday and talked about the importance of War Memorial Stadium in the history of Razorback football, all the big games they had won, including a game that he won as a quarterback when he was a senior that led Arkansas to its first appearance in the SEC championship game. That happened at War Memorial. Brett Bielema never wanted to play there. He let it be known he didn't like it. It made people in Little Rock mad. You cannot divide your fan base like that. So the next coach needs to come in and bring some of that culture back. Let's talk about Musselman. You asked about him. He had no previous ties to Arkansas, but what did he do? Right after he got here, he brought players in from Eddie Sutton's teams. He brought players in from Nolan Richardson's teams. And what did they tell these current basketball players? Hey, you haven't always been the team you were last year, not even making it to the NCAA tournament. There was a time when putting that uniform on meant something, and you better reach a point where it means something to you, because we don't like you guys wearing that uniform, playing the way you're playing. And look what we see right now. Team's undefeated. Okay, Metropolis Hog says, a lot of fans hope that Coach Lunney is retained, but what are your thoughts on him finding a head coaching job somewhere? I think he and some of our current assistants could do well at New Mexico or Rice if it opens up. Is that something he's considering? Well, you know, look, I haven't asked him about that. It would be inappropriate for me to approach him right now, so soon after, you know, his last game as interim coach, to talk about something like that. But I think he needs to stay. If somebody comes in and builds this program back up where they're really competitive, if it's somebody that only is here 5, 6 years, you might see Barry Lunney take over this program after that. He played a key role as an interim head coach. I really believe that. Now, Nuttless Hog asked, did Jeff Long cave into influences from outside the university in regard to rivalries we had established just to satisfy the SEC and probably ESPN in regard to Texas A&M? He did not seem, in my estimation, to have made the welfare of the university a priority over his. You know, there's a lot of debate about that, and I don't know how much influence he had with the SEC commissioner. There was a decision clearly made when A&M came into the league to let that day after Thanksgiving game be taken away from Arkansas and given to A&M so they could play LSU, because those two schools are very close to each other and they always have had kind of a rivalry. But what Arkansas got in return was this idiotic rivalry with Missouri that nobody cares about, with this dopey battle line trophy that nobody cares about. I think Jeff Long should have tried to block that decision. Maybe it wouldn't have worked, but I think he would have gained a lot of points in the eyes of Razorback fans for standing up for this program when the SEC was trying to do something that clearly wasn't in the best interest of Razorback football. Bream says we hear a lot about smoke screens during coaching searches. Assuming that's a real thing, what is the point? Fan base doesn't know anything, so who are they trying to misdirect and why? Well, the fan base may not know anything, but they sure think they do. And I think that's the reason for it. There's really two reasons. First of all, any athletic director worth his salt is going to interview several candidates before he makes his decision, because his top target might not have accepted the job. And you've got to know at that point what you're going to do if your top guy turns it down. So you're going around talking to all these people. You don't want, those coaches certainly don't want it out there that they're talking to Arkansas if they haven't decided to go to Arkansas, or if they don't know they're going to go to Arkansas. And especially your top target. I mean, you're talking to him, he may not have decided that if he wants to take the job at that point, but he sure doesn't want his own fans to think he's leaving if he's not leaving. So that's basically why they do that. I call that play brother. Says, regardless of who our next head coach is, it's possible our overall wins next year could be similar to current wins. Discounting that number, what are other tangible things we could look at to determine if we're moving in the right direction? Well, first of all, the right coach is going to win non-conference games. Maybe not Notre Dame next year on the road, but that would be the exception. You should be able to win these non-conference games. They've always done that in the past. And then if they hire the right guy, I expect him to very quickly break this SEC losing streak. Look, I'm not saying you come in here and finish third in the West the first year, but you ought to be able to win a game or two. Arkansas teams in the past, even when they weren't very good, did that. I mean, that John L. Smith team won an SEC game that year. Look, here's the myth, that this team has been 2-10 for 2 straight years because it didn't have talent. It didn't have coaching. And if they get the right coach, they can rectify that. That'll be the sign that they start winning at least 1 or 2 SEC games and then win those non-conference games. Swine American says Mike Leach went off on some columnist over the weekend after Washington handily beat Washington State. Are you bothered by that kind of behavior aimed at the media? Do you think Hunter Yurachek would find that a red flag that would disqualify Leach from consideration? I have no idea what Hunter Yurachek thought about that situation. I mean, I know some people that know Mike Leach. Apparently the guy is in their local media and he's been out there for years trying to punch Leach's buttons. And I guess Leach finally got tired of him and told him off. But look, is Nick Saban nice to the media? Coaches have been going off on reporters forever. Now, some people in these days think it's politically incorrect to do that. I don't. I've been insulted by coaches before. Lou Holtz used to go off on me all the time. Houston Nutt didn't particularly care for me. I'm 71 and I'm still working. Having a coach mad at me didn't hurt me. J.B. Carroll asked, have you perceived maturation in Coach Kiffin from his time with the Raiders, USC at Alabama, leading to the current man rested and tanned in Boca Raton? I don't know about being rested and tanned. As of 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock when we did this show, there was still no head coach name. But let's say if it turns out to be Lane Kiffin, I think you can assume that Hunter Yurachek has checked into that situation and he has decided that Lane Kiffin has matured. That's called vetting, and I would assume he's done that. Dr. Starks asked, who would be on your Mount Rushmore of Arkansas football? Well, there are 4 presidents, I think, on Mount Rushmore. So let's go with 4, maybe 2 players and 2 coaches. I'd go Frank Broyles, a national championship coach. I'd go Ken Hatfield, highest winning percentage of any Razorback coach. Best offensive player, no question, Darren McFadden. He almost won the Heisman Trophy twice. And then I would go with Lloyd Phillips, an Outland Trophy winner, great defensive player. Okay, Dr. Starks has a follow-up question. Aside from maybe the '94 basketball title, do you have a favorite moment or story covering the Razorbacks in all these years that you can share? Yes, the 1981-82, it's been so long ago. It's the year Arkansas beat Texas, number one, 42-11. I was living on in a house up on Mount Sequoia at the time, and if you went out on the back deck, you could look all the way down East Dixon Street, West Dixon Street, up toward the university, past the railroad tracks. And I'd gone to that game. It was very loud, filed a 6 o'clock report, a 10 o'clock report, got home late. My wife was already asleep, got in bed, and I woke up about 1 in the morning, and I thought I'd gone nuts because I could still hear the game in my ears. And I guess it woke my wife up, and she said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I think I'm losing it. I may have damaged my hearing because I'm still hearing that football game in my ears." And she said, "I hear it too." So I got up and started trying to follow the sound of that noise. Where was it coming from? Went out onto the back deck, standing there looking all the way down Dixon Street, past the railroad tracks, back up to close to where we are now in this studio. And all I saw was wall-to-wall people in that street, and they were going nuts. Now that game was over 4, 5 o'clock, something like that. Here it was 6, 7 hours later. All those people were still going crazy. And I've told people since then who don't get this old Arkansas-Texas rivalry, if you'd been standing with me that night at 1 in the morning looking down that street, you would have known what that rivalry meant. Okay, on a lighter note, would you be, PEAKHOG wants to know, would you be in favor of resurrecting the media 4x100 relay and outdoor track? I remember Nate Allen killing his second leg back in the early '80s. You know what, if they revived that, us old guys would not be running it anymore. I don't think any of us could run 100 yards. Now the younger guys in the Razorback media today, no question they're in better shape than we were back then. I mean, they don't drink as much as we did. They don't eat as much as we did. And they'd probably be more competitive, look more athletic. But I got news for you. We'd be more fun to watch, especially Nate Allen. I still remember him going around that back curve and had his shirt tail flying out, running as hard as he could. That was pretty funny. Well, that's it for this week. I'll be back next Monday for another edition of Ask Mike.